When two cops target an innocent black woman, they think they can get away with it. Until her big brother walks in and turns the tables. What happens next will leave you cheering for justice. The scene opens in a small, dimly lit diner on the outskirts of town. The restaurant is a cozy spot, known for its friendly staff and homemade pies. It's late evening, and the place is nearly empty except for a few customers scattered around. Among them is Jasmine, a 25-year-old black woman sitting alone in a booth. She's dressed casually in a hoodie and jeans, sipping coffee while scrolling through her phone. Jasmine is waiting for her older brother, Marcus, to pick her up after her car broke down earlier that day. The bell above the diner's door jingles, and two police officers, Officer Daniels and Officer Harris, walk in. They're in full uniform, their presence immediately commanding attention. They glance around the room, their eyes landing on Jasmine. The atmosphere in the diner shifts subtly as the officers approach her booth. Officer Daniels, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a stern expression, stands over Jasmine's table. "Mind if we ask you a few questions, ma'am?" he says, his tone polite but firm. Jasmine looks up, confused but cooperative. "Sure, what's this about?" she asks. Officer Harris, a shorter man with a smirk, comes in. "We've had reports of a suspect matching your description in the area. We just need to verify a few things." Jasmine's brow furrows. "A suspect? For what?" she asks, her voice tinged with disbelief. The officers don't answer directly. Instead, they ask for her ID. Jasmine hesitates but hands it over, trying to stay calm. As they examine her ID, the officers begin to question her more aggressively, their tone shifting from polite to accusatory. "Where were you earlier today?" Officer Daniels demands. "Do you have any weapons on you? Any drugs?" Jasmine's frustration grows. "I've been here for the past hour waiting for my brother. I don't have anything illegal on me. You can check if you want," she says, trying to keep her voice steady. The officers exchange a glance, and Officer Harris smirks again. "We'll do just that," he says, reaching for his handcuffs. The officers order Jasmine to stand up and place her hands on the table. She complies, her face burning with embarrassment as the other customers watch silently. Officer Harris begins to pat her down aggressively, his hands lingering longer than necessary. Jasmine's eyes well up with tears, but she refuses to cry. "This is unnecessary," she says, her voice trembling. "I haven't done anything wrong." Officer Daniels leans in close, his voice low and menacing. "We'll be the judge of that." He pulls out her wallet and starts rifling through it, tossing her cards and cash onto the table. The other customers look uncomfortable but say nothing, afraid to intervene. Just as the officers are about to handcuff Jasmine, the diner door bursts open. In walks Marcus, Jasmine's older brother. He's a towering figure, standing at 6 feet 5 inches with a muscular build. He's dressed in a sharp suit, his presence commanding immediate respect. His eyes scan the room, landing on his sister, who's visibly shaken. The moment Marcus enters the diner, the energy in the room shifts dramatically. His presence is commanding. A tall, broad-shouldered man in a perfectly tailored suit, his sharp eyes scanning the scene with a mix of concern and simmering anger. The officers, who moments ago seemed so confident, now falter under his gaze. Marcus's voice booms across the diner, cutting through the tension like a knife. "What's going on here?" he demands, his tone firm and unyielding. Officer Daniels, the taller of the two cops, tries to regain control of the situation. "This is police business, sir. Step back," he says, though his voice lacks the authority it had just moments ago. Marcus doesn't flinch. Instead, he takes a few deliberate steps forward, positioning himself protectively beside Jasmine. His eyes dart to his sister, who looks up at him with a mixture of relief and lingering fear. "This is my sister," Marcus says, his voice steady but laced with an edge of warning. "What are you doing to her?" Jasmine, her voice trembling but clear, explains the situation. "They think I'm some kind of suspect. They've been harassing me for no reason." Marcus's jaw tightens as he turns back to the officers, his gaze piercing. "On what grounds?" he asks, his tone sharp. "What evidence do you have?" The officers exchange uneasy glances, their confidence visibly crumbling. Officer Harris, the shorter cop, stammers, "We had a report," but Marcus cuts him off mid-sentence. "A report?" Marcus repeats, his voice rising. "That's it? You're harassing my sister based on a report? Do you even have a description of this so-called suspect, or did you just see a black woman sitting here and decide she was guilty?" His words hang in the air, heavy and accusatory. The officers shift uncomfortably, their earlier bravado now replaced with unease. Marcus doesn't wait for their response. He pulls out his phone, holding it up to record the encounter. "I suggest you think very carefully about your next move," he says, his voice calm but dripping with authority. "Because if you continue to detain my sister without probable cause, I'll make sure this goes viral. And trust me, you don't want that." The officers freeze, their faces paling as they realize the gravity of the situation. Officer Daniels takes a step back, his hands raised slightly in a gesture of retreat. "We were just doing our job," he mutters, though the excuse sounds hollow even to his own ears. Marcus doesn't let up. Your job is to protect and serve, not harass innocent people, he says, his voice rising with each word. Now, apologize to my sister and leave. The officers, now thoroughly deflated, mumble a half-hearted apology to Jasmine before quickly gathering their things and exiting the diner. The tension in the room dissipates as the door closes behind them, leaving Marcus and Jasmine standing together in the quiet diner. Marcus turns to his sister, his expression softening as he pulls her into a tight hug. You okay, sis? He asks, his voice gentle now. Jasmine nods, wiping away her tears. Thanks to you, she says, her voice filled with gratitude. The diner is silent, the tension palpable as Marcus stands tall, his phone still recording the encounter. The officers, now visibly shaken, exchange uneasy glances, realizing they've lost control of the situation. Officer Daniels, the taller cop, tries to salvage what little dignity he has left. We were just following protocol, he says, though his voice lacks conviction. Marcus doesn't buy it for a second. Protocol? Marcus repeats, his voice sharp and cutting. Protocol doesn't include humiliating an innocent woman in public. Protocol doesn't include treating someone like a criminal without evidence. You crossed the line and now you're going to face the consequences. His words are deliberate, each one landing like a hammer, leaving no room for argument. Officer Harris, the shorter cop, shifts uncomfortably, his earlier smirk completely gone. He glances at the other customers in the diner who are now watching the scene with a mix of relief and quiet approval. The weight of their collective gaze only adds to the officer's discomfort. Marcus takes a step closer, his presence overwhelming. You owe my sister an apology, he says, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. And then you're going to leave now. The officers hesitate, their pride clearly wounded, but they know they've been outmaneuvered. Officer Daniels mutters a barely audible sorry to Jasmine, his eyes avoiding hers. Officer Harris follows suit, his apology even more mumbled and insincere. Marcus isn't satisfied, but he knows this isn't the time to push further. Get out, he says, his voice low and commanding. The officers don't need to be told twice. They quickly gather their things and head for the door, their earlier swagger replaced with hurried steps. As the door closes behind them, the diner erupts into applause. The other customers who had been silent witnesses to the injustice now express their relief and admiration for Marcus's bravery. Jasmine, still standing by the booth, looks up at her brother with tears in her eyes. Thank you, she whispers, her voice filled with gratitude. Marcus pulls her into another hug, his protective instincts still on high alert. You don't have to thank me, he says softly. I'll always have your back. Officers sit in their patrol car, visibly shaken. Officer Harris turns to Daniels, his voice trembling. Do you think he'll really post that video? He asks, his earlier confidence completely shattered. Daniels sighs, running a hand over his face. I don't know, he admits, but we better be more careful next time. Back inside the diner, Marcus and Jasmine prepare to leave. The owner, an older man with a kind face, approaches them. Your meal's on the house, he says, his voice warm. What you did took courage. Marcus nods in appreciation, but his focus remains on Jasmine. Let's get you home, he says, his arm around her shoulders as they walk out into the night. The aftermath of the confrontation in the diner unfolds with a mix of relief, reflection, and a lingering sense of justice served. As Marcus and Jasmine step out into the cool night air, the weight of what just happened begins to settle. The street is quiet, a stark contrast to the tension-filled scene they left behind. Marcus keeps his arm around Jasmine's shoulders, a protective gesture that speaks volumes about their bond. You sure you're okay? Marcus asks, his voice softer now, filled with brotherly concern. Jasmine nods, though her hands are still slightly trembling. I'm just glad you showed up when you did, she says, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. I didn't know what to do. They wouldn't listen to me. Marcus stops walking and turns to face her, his expression serious. You shouldn't have had to go through that, he says firmly. No one should, but I'm proud of you for staying calm. You handled yourself with dignity. Jasmine manages a small smile, though her eyes still glisten with unshed tears. I just kept thinking about what you always tell me. Stand your ground, but don't let them see you break. Marcus nods, a proud smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. That's my girl, he says, pulling her into another hug. But next time, call me sooner, all right? You don't have to face stuff like this alone. As they continue walking toward Marcus's car, the conversation shifts to what comes next. Do you think they'll try something like that again? Jasmine asks, her voice tinged with worry. Marcus's expression hardens. If they do, they'll regret it, he says. But I'm not letting this go. I'm going to file a complaint with their department. What they did was wrong and they need to be held accountable. Jasmine looks up at him, her gratitude evident. Thank you, Marcus. I don't know what I'd do without you. He smiles down at her, his tone lighter now. You'd figure it out. You're stronger than you think, sis, but you don't have to figure it out alone. That's what family's for. Meanwhile, back at the diner, the other customers are still buzzing about what happened. The owner, a middle-aged man named Frank Footy, is wiping down the counter, his expression thoughtful. One of the regulars, an older woman named Marge, approaches him. "That was something, wasn't it?" she says, her voice filled with admiration. Frank nods. "Sure was. That young man didn't back down. You don't see that every day." Marge sighs, her expression turning somber. "It's a shame it had to happen at all. That poor girl didn't deserve any of that." Frank agrees, his tone heavy with regret. "You're right, but maybe this'll make people think twice before they judge someone based on how they look. That brother of hers sure made an impression. The earlier bravado they displayed in the diner is completely gone, replaced by a palpable sense of unease." Officer Harris finally breaks the silence. "You think he'll really post that video?" he asks, his voice barely above a whisper. Daniel sighs, running a hand over his face. "I don't know," he admits, "but if he does, we're done for. The department won't back us on this one." Harris shifts uncomfortably in his seat. "We were just doing our job," he mutters, though the excuse sounds hollow even to his ears. Daniel shakes his head. "No, we weren't. We let our biases get the better of us. And now we're paying the price." The aftermath of the confrontation serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of accountability, courage, nokoeshoi, and the enduring strength of family. Marcus's actions not only protected his sister, but also sent a clear message. Injustice will not be tolerated, and those who stand against it can make a difference. The story ends on a hopeful note, leaving the audience inspired to take action in their own lives.